Now on BBC World News, the latest business news from across the globe. World Business Report.
Global food crisis. Millions could be pushed into poverty as the war in Ukraine continues to drive prices up, warns the head of the World Bank. Fully charged, Tesla's profits surge as buyers line up for its electric cars despite rising price tags. Hello, you're watching World Business Report. I'm Jonathan Josephs. Welcome to you wherever in the world you're watching from. Let's start with a warning that the war in Ukraine risks pushing hundreds of millions of people into poverty because of rising food prices. The head of the World Bank has told the BBC it risks causing a human catastrophe. That's because Ukraine is a huge exporter of foods such as sunflower oil and wheat. But those supplies have been all but cut off from global markets because of the war, sending prices to record highs. The World Bank's David Malpass was speaking to our economics editor Faisal Islam in Washington, where the development body is holding its annual spring meeting.
We are expecting a big new addition to people in extreme poverty. And as I say, it's magnified because of the prices. When prices go up, the poor can't afford them. That's obvious. And they get crowded out of the market.
What are we talking about? A few million?
We're talking about, tens and tens of millions of people pushed into poverty, maybe hundreds of millions before it's done. We don't know how long it'll go.
So the world is facing the food crisis as well?
There is enough food in the world. We're entering this crisis with global stockpiles pretty large by historical standards. And so that's good. And there'll have to be a sharing process or a sales process. People can make money from the higher prices, so they'll enter the market. And so I think there's enough, but people in poor countries are going to be left out because of the high price.
And just how high prices and how broad will, in terms of the poverty that's created, is the problem?
On a year-over-year basis, we're looking at maybe 37% increase in food prices. That's huge, and it's particularly focused, magnified for the poor because they spend more of their money, or what little money they may have, it goes to food. And so when the food prices go up, it means they eat less and have less money for anything else, for schooling. And so that means that it's really an unfair kind of crisis. It hits the poorest the hardest.
And it seems like an extraordinary pressure on the world's most vulnerable, that these two crises, which are not of their own making in any way, follow so closely after each other. Just how much under pressure are the world's poor from the confluence of these two crises?
It's a human catastrophe, meaning nutrition goes down, but then it also becomes a political challenge for governments who can't do anything about it. They didn't cause it, and they see the prices going up. They want to subsidize it for their people. What we're encouraging the world to do is increase supply wherever you can of energy, of fertilizer, and of food, and then also do targeted assistance. So if you can really separate out and treat the vulnerable within the population, that's going to be the best.
That was David Malpass, president of the World Bank, talking to our economics editor Faisal Islam. Let's take a look at some of the other stories making headlines this hour. Sticking with those rising food prices, and the Swiss food giant Nestlé has said more price rises are on the way. The world's biggest food maker, whose products include Nescafé coffee and Kit Kat chocolates, saw sales rise by a higher than expected 7.6% in the first 3 months of this year. That was because it passed rising costs on to consumers. Nestlé has stopped selling non-essential products in Russia, but still supplies infant formula and medical nutrition, despite pushback from its employees in Ukraine. Russia has fined Alphabet's Google 4 million rubles, that's about $50,000, for failing to delete what it terms fake information about the war in Ukraine. That's according to Russia's state-run news agency. Last month, President Putin's government brought in strict new laws about the war and how it could be talked about, and has blocked several social media platforms. Google hasn't yet responded to this latest ruling. And the Russian central bank will consider cutting the key interest rate from 17% at its upcoming board meeting. That's according to the governor, Elvira Nabiullina. She says that economic challenges facing Russia because of the war in Ukraine are pretty significant, and the country is widely expected to face a recession this year because of those widespread sanctions. Now let's turn to Tesla, because despite the uncertainty hanging over the global economy and soaring commodity prices, the electric car maker is continuing to power ahead. It's already the world's most valuable car company, and its boss, Elon Musk, is the world's richest man. And the company's latest results have made that fortune even greater, with the shares up more than 6.5% in pre-market trading a short while ago. Now, that's because Tesla racked up sales of more than $18 billion in the first 3 months of this year. That's an increase of 8.1% on the same quarter last year. And we obviously don't have the numbers here in the screen as I've been pointing to, but hopefully we can bring in our guest, who is Dan Ives, Managing Director at Wedbush Securities, which is an investment firm in New York who keeps a close eye on Tesla. And he joins us now from State College in Pennsylvania. Dan, thanks very much for being up so early in the morning to talk to us. There's a lot of good numbers here in these latest earnings figures from Tesla, but China's President Xi Jinping has been defending the zero COVID policy that has hampered production at the Tesla plant in Shanghai. And they have got these new factories coming on stream in Berlin and in Austin, Texas. How is that likely to play out in the next few months in terms of keeping production targets on schedule?
Yeah, I mean, when you look at these results, their back was against the wall, given the supply chain issues. And of course, what we're seeing in China is zero COVID. That's a key artery for them. These were almost Cinderella-like numbers. I mean, $1 billion beat. They're navigating this much better than the street expected. But look, China's the elephant in the room. If there's another COVID shutdown there, that's 2,000 cars per day. The street has sort of factored that in. Overall, ripped the Band-Aid off. I mean, this is a result and guidance that really shows Tesla's lead in EVs is increasing, not decreasing.
So lots of confidence there, but at the same time, by Elon Musk's own admission, prices have been rising for these electric cars. They're already pretty expensive. Commodity prices are on the rise. That's everything from the steel to the battery materials. Do you think that consumers are going to carry on paying those higher prices, and that Tesla will be able to keep its sales on track?
Yeah, I think that was the key question going into last night, because look at Netflix raising prices, obviously saw churn. You look at Tesla, I mean, they're raising prices, really no impact to demand, actually demand increasing. I think it shows that they continue to have room to raise price higher because demand's outstripping supply right now by about 30%. And I think you start to put that together with overall the biggest transformation to the auto industry since 1950s with EV that Tesla's leading. Of course, you got the China issue, but forest through the trees, I mean, this is really just a massive transformation story in the making.
So, as you say, Elon Musk is overseeing this massive transformation in the car market, but at the same time, he's trying to take control of the social media platform Twitter. And in this latest investor call, he was also talking about robo-taxis. Do you think there's sufficient bandwidth within Elon Musk's own thinking that he can keep Tesla on track, that we'll keep seeing these strong numbers as this year progresses?
Look, and I think that's a great question, because that's always been a knock against Musk. I mean, if you go back to SpaceX and of course Tesla, he wasn't going to be able to balance both. And obviously they're two of the most successful technology companies, disruptive technology in the world. Look, with Twitter, I mean, that's a Game of Thrones going on right now. And that's a get out the popcorn moment, because this is going to be a battle for Twitter, probably a tender battle that ultimately happens. I mean, Musk ultimately wants it. Is there a competing bid? I think the street's worried about distraction, but Musk's been able to handle that well. He's not going to ultimately run Twitter as a CEO. So I think bark's worse than the bite right now. But in terms of Twitter, I mean, I think the soap opera is just starting.
Thank you very much, Dan Ives from Wedbush Securities there. That's all we've got time for on World Business Report. Plenty more on the website. Sport Today is next.